I do not have the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm that I've caused.
This is the apology of Daniel LaPlante, who committed the most monstrous crime of taking the lives of 4 people of the same family, including an infant. Remember your parents saying, "Even walls have ears"? This true crime story will make you believe in it like never before. The story of Daniel LaPlante has become twisted folklore. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that not many people, if anybody, has taken rejection quite as LaPlante did. His bizarre and horrific stalking of a young family is the stuff of nightmares, so make sure you grab onto something while you're watching this one. Born in 1970, Daniel LaPlante, as you can imagine, had a traumatic childhood. LaPlante suffered carnal and psychological abuse from several different adults, with his father being the most punishing to him. His troubled upbringing affected every aspect of his young life. He struggled with school, both academically and socially, in addition to being diagnosed with dyslexia from an early age. He had very few friends throughout his school days, with most of his classmates in North Middlesex High School referring to him as creepy or weird. In his early teenage years, LaPlante was referred by school officials to a psychiatrist due to his abnormal behavior and general reluctancy towards his appearance, hygiene, and self-improvement. It was around the same time that Daniel's criminal career began. Instead of spending his time as most teens did, hanging out with friends, playing sports, doing homework, Daniel began breaking into people's homes. Clearly, Daniel's motives for breaking and entering were not just about stealing valuables. Of course, he would take things, but the thrill of being in someone else's home without them knowing was what really gave Daniel a rush. He rooted around in people's belongings and moved objects and furniture. He also left items sitting around, like half-drunk beverages. He derived pleasure from the knowledge that he was scaring people, even making them think they were losing their minds. We have to take into account that although LaPlante killed an entire family, it was not this case that made him famous, but the cases he committed before that, although no lives were lost in these cases. Confused? Let us set the timeline straight. In 1986, Annie Andrews, 16 years old at the time, received an anonymous call from a young man named Daniel LaPlante, who informed her that he was studying at the same school as her and had gotten her phone number from one of his friends. Daniel LaPlante described himself with great features in order to attract Annie. He said he was blonde, handsome, athletic, and lived in the same neighborhood. Always acting polite, they talked for some time until he convinced Annie to go on a date. On the night of the date, when Daniel went to Annie's house, she realized that he was totally different from what he had described himself. He was in dirty clothes, not athletic, not handsome, and not blonde. His hair was dark. Nevertheless, Annie decided to give Daniel LaPlante a chance, but she quickly regretted it. The boy was asking insistent questions about the death of her mother, who had recently died of cancer. The conversation was one of the worst possible, quite different from the phone calls. She abandoned the date, but now LaPlante knows where she lives. And this is where the story gets extremely creepy. In an effort to contact their deceased mother, Annie and Jessica Andrews held a seance in the basement of their home. Although nothing strange occurred during the seance, the sisters began hearing knocks on their bedroom walls. At first, the sisters wondered if the knocking was a sign of their mother's spirit, but as time passed, they began to fear something much darker in the house. The knocking would take place all day and night, waking the girls from sleep and scaring them. Items began disappearing, then reappearing in different locations, and the girls would come home from school to find their bedroom furniture moved. Annie and Jessica's father, Brian Andrews, didn't believe that the house was haunted. He hadn't experienced any of the phenomenon the girls reported, and he knew about the seance. Brian attributed the reported activity to their imaginations and grief over their mother's death. One day in early 1987, Annie and Jessica heard strange sounds coming from the basement. When they went to investigate, they found a horrible sight. Written on the wall in what looked like blood was a message that read, "I'm in your room, come find me." The sisters ran screaming from the house, searching for a neighbor who could alert their father. When Brian Andrews came home, he discovered that the words on the basement wall had been written in ketchup rather than blood, and once again assumed this was a cry for attention from his daughters. Though the noises died down for a while, another message eventually appeared on the wall, this time in Annie's bedroom. The note read, "I'm back, find me if you can." Once again, the girls fled the house, and a neighbor called Brian. As he entered the house, he was greeted by the source of all the strangeness his daughters had experienced over the past several months. Their father found himself face to face with a boy with his wife's makeup and clothes, brandishing a hatchet. It was, of course, LaPlante, who had been living in a crawl space behind their walls. Just imagine that for a second. A person literally living inside your house walls. The other very creepy part of the story that some articles report is that there were peepholes in the walls of the passageway, which Daniel used to spy on members of the Andrews family. How terrifying that must have been for the family. LaPlante was arrested and held in a juvenile facility for several months. Daniel's sentence was very light, and within a few months he was already on the streets. And almost immediately, Daniel returned to his life of theft. During one of his robberies, he obtained 2 guns from a neighbor's house. He was gearing up for his next big event. On December 1st, 1987, Daniel broke into the Gustafsson family home, around half a mile from LaPlante's own family residence. There, LaPlante was greeted by 33-year-old pregnant Priscilla Gustafsson and her 2 young children, Abigail and William. Priscilla's husband, Andrew Gustafsson, was at work when LaPlante invaded his home, and upon returning was met with the most harrowing sight of his life. Andrew discovered Priscilla lying face down on her bed, her pillows dyed red with blood splatter. She had been abused and assaulted by Daniel LaPlante, and then shot multiple times in the head at point-blank range. Andrew Gustafsson called the police, who then discovered the bodies of Andrew's 2 children in 2 different bathtubs. 5-year-old William had been drowned in the upstairs bathroom, while 8-year-old Abigail had endured a similar fate in the downstairs bathroom. A handful of items which double as restraints were found in the Gustafsson household. This prompts the theory that LaPlante forced his way into the residence and held his victims at gunpoint while he restrained them. He likely ended Priscilla Gustafsson's life first to remove the biggest threat, then drowned the children one by one. It didn't take long for authorities to link the Gustafsson family murder with Daniel LaPlante. Police sought to apprehend him, but found that LaPlante had since fled the area. A manhunt quickly ensued. A few towns over from Townsend, LaPlante broke into a woman's home and kidnapped her in her vehicle. The woman escaped, but LaPlante was spotted by someone who had seen his photograph on the news. Daniel LaPlante was discovered hiding in a dumpster 48 hours after the manhunt for him began. When he was inspected, a hair belonging to Abigail Gustafsson was found on his sock, cementing LaPlante's involvement in her murder. A year later, Daniel LaPlante was sentenced to 3 life sentences for the murder of the Gustafsson family. Since his incarceration, Daniel LaPlante has showed little remorse for his actions. While clearly suffering from a multitude of personality disorders, LaPlante continues to show that he is a broken man beyond repair. From 1988 to 2014, LaPlante attempted to sue the courts multiple times for violating his rights. In 2013, Daniel had made claims that he was not being allowed to properly exercise his faith. While in prison, he decided to become a Wiccan, and in order to worship, he demanded that he be brought various ritual oils. These included dragon's blood, black opium, and honeysuckle. Apparently, he also required carrot cake. In 2017, 46-year-old Daniel LaPlante appealed for a reduced sentence after the Supreme Court ruled that juveniles cannot be sentenced to life in prison without parole. He had been in prison for 30 years and hoped that his sentence could be changed so that he could serve his life sentences concurrently rather than consecutively. This would have made him eligible for parole in 2017 rather than in 2032. LaPlante apologized to the Gustafsson family at the resentencing hearing, saying, "I do not have the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm that I've caused. From the very essence of who I am, from the depths of my soul, I am sorry." According to those in attendance, however, the apology felt shallow and insincere. Daniel was obviously just going through the motions of what he thought he needed to do. While making his apology, he was stone-faced and did not make eye contact. The judge formally resentenced Daniel to his original sentence of 3 life sentences to be served consecutively. He would have the opportunity for parole after 45 years in 2032. Do you think Daniel LaPlante should be given a chance at parole? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and also subscribe to our channel for your regular dose of whodunits. See you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay warm, and don't get any crazy ideas.